My name is Vince Cruz. I am the Chief Operating Officer for R&T, and I'd like to introduce Kevin Owens. Kevin is from Control Cyber and has more than 25 years of experience in control systems and cybersecurity in both the commercial and government sector, to include the Department of Defense. He is uniquely qualified to examine a network from the adversary's point of view. Kevin has traveled globally, responding to security incidents and performing cyber and physical security assessments, creating more defensible network postures, increasing the customer's ability to detect and respond to an attack by closing vulnerabilities, and significantly enhancing security. He has coordinated with several government agencies, law enforcement, national intelligence entities, private sector, international constituents on cybersecurity issues and events. Kevin is an expert in industrial control systems, and he welcomes your challenging questions. With that, Kevin, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Vince. All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about defending pipeline infrastructure, and we're going to take a step back a little bit and look at a little bit about what are control systems, understand a little bit about Colonial Pipeline and where things went wrong there, as well as go through as how can we address some of these things. So control systems, they're everywhere. They touch many aspects of our daily lives. They're in our planes, our trains, our automobiles, our electric power, our manufacturing facilities, our water treatment, our chemical manufacturing, everything, including oil and natural gas. Now, most of these systems, just to try and understand control systems, I know it's a new concept, but if you start looking at what's a simple control system that we use every day. So if Teresa glances over her shoulder and looks at that thermostat on the wall behind her, she sees a very simple control system, that thermostat. Okay, a person can increase or decrease the temperature on that controller, that thermostat, and that temperature sensor, that input, measures what the current temperature is. If it's too high or low, then it's going to turn on the furnace or the air conditioner until that proper temperature is reached. On a newer display, like the one here, the operator can see this temperature setting, see the current temperature, whether that HVAC is on, it's heating, it's ventilating, it's air conditioning, what is going on right now. So how did we get to where we are today? Well, one of the big things there is there's a difference between the IT, the enterprise networks, and the OT, operational technology networks. That's where your industrial control systems, your ICS, reside. So there's no easy solution for that operating transition, technology side, because antivirus potentially doesn't work on those machines. Patch management, if you patch some of these systems that are outdated, your application might not work anymore. And so the office environment's a lot different because you're out there in the field, dirty, oily, wonderful environmental conditions. And when it comes to incident response, people know how to respond, in most cases, to an attack on an enterprise network. But when it comes to the operational technology, they don't really know how to address these systems, and how do you even isolate it if you want to isolate an attack. Asset management. If you're on the enterprise side, there's someone who goes around and scans all the computers and knows where each computer or each device is located. When it comes to asset management on the control side, that is typically not done or very infrequently. So those enterprise systems, they sit around for 2-3 years before someone upgrades. On the OT side, that equipment can be there for 10, 20 years or longer. And I have seen operating systems to this day still running Windows NT. So ideally, your OT system is disconnected from the IT systems. But when you start to get management and others, billing and project managers, and they start wanting to see all this data, it starts to get interconnected into the enterprise. And that's part of the problem. Is it's great that incorporating these systems in helps increase a little bit efficiency. I can now see what's going on across the larger area. But now I've opened up the attack surface. People can come in through that enterprise network and come over into my OT environment. And that's where my systems are most likely a little less robust. I don't have all that monitoring and visibility that I have on the IT side. So that's why we've got to increase that visibility. We've got to do things to handle those IT-centric threats. So how big is this pipeline problem? Well, there are 2.7 million miles of pipelines that are also carrying not just oil, but natural gas. 40% of all the nation's electricity is going through those pipes, as well as there's 170,000 miles that's carrying hazardous liquids. So remember I was telling you about how those systems aren't as well protected. So critical infrastructure has been, over the past few years, getting targeted more and more. So last year alone, 4 new threat groups were identified who were specifically targeting industrial control systems, these OT systems, and it was a 36% increase in known groups in just the last year. So what happened this year in May 2021, our pipelines kind of froze up. There's an Alaska pipeline picture for you. So at the height of that ransomware attack that took place, 88% of the gas stations in the nation's capital were out of gas, and over 16,000 gas stations along the eastern corridor ran dry. So just to understand how big this one set of pipelines are, is there are 2 main tubes there, split up amongst 4 lines, that's over 5,500 miles long. And it carries 3 million barrels of fuel every day between Texas and New York. So they got hit with dark side ransomware. So here's a little picture of the dark side. Your network's been locked out. You need to pay us a certain value in Bitcoin. And after we get that Bitcoin, we'll give you the decryptor, and we know how to decrypt. So how did they get in? Well, it's most likely a phishing or a spear phishing. Somebody clicked on an email, they wanted to win those 2 free United Airline tickets to anywhere in the world, or the $50 Amazon gift card for free. Yeah, no one's going to send you free things in your email, except for Teresa, right? So those phishing and spear phishing emails, that is probably well over 80% of all the compromised networks are all from phishing emails. So one of the questions I got was, where did they hit? Did they hit the OT system? Did they hit the IT systems? This one, the ransomware hit only the financial systems. Okay. Yes, the enterprise systems were connected to those control systems. So there was that actual links where something could have spread. But in this case, somebody in finance clicked on one of those emails and got the entire finance department hit with ransomware. So now the big question you should be asking is, well, if the finance systems were hit and those were taken offline, why did the pipelines get shut off? Why do we run into fuel problems for a little over a week? They shut them off because they did not know how to monitor. They did not know how to charge people accordingly of how much fuel went through that pipeline. So they wound up paying $4.4 million ransom in Bitcoin. And the quote from the Colonial Pipeline CEO said, "It was the right thing to do for the country." And he said, "I know that's a highly controversial decision." So now you're like, well, they paid, you got your decryptor right, and you got to restore everything. Well, actually, they restored all of their systems using their own backups. They never got or used an encryption key from the dark side. So, and do you remember what I said on Monday about working with law enforcement? And here's an infamous quote there by Ronald Reagan. "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help.'" Yes, people get nervous about getting the government involved, but in this case, it was great timing. Now, this attack occurred in May, early May. Well, the Department of Justice created a ransomware and digital extortion task force in April. And if we heard earlier this morning, Elliptic, for those who were on that call, Elliptic was one of the ones who found the money, thanks to having that address of the victim. And $90 million in Bitcoin payments went to the dark side in a period of 1 year. So like May to May of 2021, there was $90 million in payments. 47% of the victims they had paid a ransom, and the average payment was $1.9 million. So just to understand a little bit of how profitable this is for these ransomware families, the dark side developer who made the code to encrypt those files, the dark side developer made 17% of that money in Bitcoin. So he made $15.5 million for the year. And then the remaining $75 million, 83%, went to the various affiliates who helped spread it and spread that, files across the world. So on June 7th, the Department of Justice announced that it had recovered 63.7 of the Bitcoins from the ransomware department. So here's the actual warrant to seize property subject to forfeiture. And you see the numbers there they are looking for. And this got approved on June 7th. They grabbed the money on June 7th. And the value of the recovered Bitcoins was only $2.3 million, in large part due to a progressive drop in the Bitcoin market since the value, dropped since they paid the ransom. So $4.4 million became $2.3 million. If they would have hung on to it to this day, it would be worth quite a bit more money. Through possession of the private key of the ransomware account, the FBI was able to retrieve that Bitcoin, though it didn't discuss all those details of how it obtained the private key. Knowing this information about the wallet helped enable the collection of that money. So what you may not have heard in the news, it was pretty quiet in the news. In mid-August, Colonial Pipeline started to send out breach notification letters to about 5,800 affected individuals who are mostly current or former company employees and their family members. Those are some of the things we've talked about the last couple of days about privacy and having people's PII or HIPAA information. Yes, all that data was stolen. So, pipeline security guidelines. So after we go through all this, these are the key things that DHS and TSA and CISA and others helped build this. Part of this came from material that was that I actually took place in 2010, and then made some updates to it in 2011. And it never saw the light of day until 2018. And then in April of this year, they updated some stuff about the criticality decisions. But unfortunately, years ago, it wasn't a priority to push this out there because oil falls under transportation, which falls under TSA. TSA is a little busy, tied up with the aviation industry. So I know this chart's a little hard to read, but the first step is pipeline operators should develop a corporate security plan for their organization. And Teresa probably, you know, it's the same thing we hear everywhere from every organization under the sun. What's the very first thing you should do? Create a security plan. And one of those things is have a security manager. When something bad happens, who are you going to call? Who's going to be managing this event? Create security-related policies and procedures. You know, these are things that, you know, you may be doing this, but if you don't write it down, if you don't have this documented, when bad things happen, that's when you need to be able to refer to this to make sure you're not missing any critical steps. The other day, I talked about having an incident response plan. If you have a team, they're going to reduce your incident costs by 33%. And you start looking at your annual risk and having, even if you hire someone whose job it is to do that across your enterprise and your OT side, you're going to reduce so much annual risk from your organization. And then annually review your documents. Am I sure I'm doing everything right? So our next thing is we go back to our little flow chart again, and now we start looking at performing critical assessments for our facilities. So we're doing a little bit of a risk assessment and looking at what is that facility's criticality. And as you can see here, this is just a quick breakdown of levels 1 through 5. A level 1 is extremely critical. I want that to be able to be back online with no loss of data immediately. And you start looking the next level down, it's acceptable recovery time, an hour with no data loss. 4 hours, 24 hours, best effort. And if I lose data for a week, that's okay. So understanding that criticality of your facilities is important. Looking at known or potential adversaries is another thing you should be looking at. Performing a vulnerability assessment, identifying your security weaknesses. Some of that is physical security, some of that is cybersecurity. You're looking at policies and procedures and so on. And then you start looking at, I've looked at this, what are my risks? So I start looking at threats, vulnerabilities, and consequence. And then I consider in how critical is that facility? And that's what's going to give me those ratings of, low, medium, high, extreme, where I've really got to worry about this red zone. And then I want to look at risk mitigation strategies. How do I reduce my risk? How do I transfer it to someone else? Transfer is usually I go buy insurance. How do I avoid the risk? And how do I just accept it? There is no way to remove all risk from the system. At some point, you're just going to have to accept it. I accept that I'm going to have users use my system. And performing ongoing risk management. So I've got to continuously monitor, reassess, and modify the program. Make sure, because there's always going to be changes to these systems or the operation of your organization. So going back to our flow chart again, is it a critical facility, right? How critical is it? And some of these things that you want to look at for critical facilities for pipelines are interconnections. I'm looking at metering or regulating stations. I'm going to look at pump stations. I'm going to look at compressors, operational control facilities, mainline valves, tank farms, terminals. All these things could be listed as critical facilities. And there are great TSA pipeline security guidelines that look at some of these critical facility criteria. So you start off with like level 1, and you look at the different subsectors, and you look at what is the guidance for that. And this continues up for the different levels. It's several pages long. Getting into the levels 5, 6, and 7, just showing you a little sample here of, I'm starting to really worry about these systems here. And again, this one, like I'm worried about it reducing service or deliverability to 100,000 or more meters. So again, understanding where your system falls in is important. And next, we start looking at security measures, okay? Both for the critical facilities as well as the non-critical facilities. So what are these security measures? Well, we're just going to go through a sample of them here because unfortunately we can't spend, a wonderful few hours going through all this, but just taking a look at some sample ones, looking at physical security, fencing. So this could be a baseline fence versus a slightly more enhanced security level, right? Try climbing over that one, Vince. So access controls. Do I just have a simple no trespassing sign that's stuck up on the fence? Or do I have cameras and I need a badge and put in a pin for granting access? What are those access controls? Again, that's that baseline versus the enhanced system. Gates. Again, here's the big thing for the enhanced system. Some of these are just looking at the enhanced ones. How am I controlling that access gate to that facility? Locks and key controls. Do I have a way to, and I'm just picked an example of Medco locks here, which actually has a little fob where I can put it in and I can gain access with my little fob. The lock and the fob retain who went through that door at what time. And it can sit there and be set up to say, only allow this person in Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. So, and these can be programmed and adjusted and the information downloaded so you can see that information and control access to facilities for specific individuals for specific times of the day or days of the week. Perimeter lighting. Again, having the proper lighting around the facility. Again, this is for the enhanced, those critical sites where you need that enhanced security. Intrusion detection and monitoring. If someone's getting in, how do I see that they got in? What's gonna be recording that? And how can I detect it and see it quickly and respond to it? So personal ID and badging. Is it just a simple little prox card that people are running around with? And they may have it, you know, just in their pocket, in their wallet, out when they need it. Or do they have some kind of ID that they have to be wearing around their neck, and it might have a little smart chip in it that's got all sorts of information. It's got the name of the company, the individual, a picture. So it's more difficult to spoof who that individual is. So you can't walk around and just go, hey, I'm here. I just walked into your place, like Teresa was talking about the other day, and getting in up the elevator and riding up to a secure floor. Having that badge which is visible so people can stop you as you're roaming around. Background investigation. Is it a simple little form for like a pre-screening when you go in for a job? Well, for a baseline facility where you don't need that enhanced security, that's great. Or if it's that enhanced one where I start needing a full background investigation, I need to talk to the person's relatives and family and friends and start asking about their police records and their financial monies. You know, I pulled off an example here of governmental ones. There are non-governmental ones that will actually go to this level 2 as well. So I was just trying to touch on some of those physical security measures. There's a lot more. Equipment maintenance and testing, design and construction, communication, drills and exercises. There's a whole list, and they have different things to look for if the site is critical or not. So if it's a critical site, there's going to be a lot more physical security records and things that need to be done. This same concept is with cybersecurity measures. The cybersecurity measures now, they use the NIST cybersecurity framework. Identify your assets, protect your assets, detect any incidents, respond with a plan, and be able to recover and get back to normal operations. So on the cyber exercise part, they're looking for identify. Same things we hear all the time: asset management. What's the business environment? What's your governance? That's your policies and procedures, all that wonderful documentation. What's the risk management strategy? Have you performed a risk assessment? Protect. Now I've got that access control. I'm going through, I'm training those individuals. So how do I make sure they have their cybersecurity awareness training that is a little bit better than click, 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 where they're not really watching it? If they don't understand why they need long passwords, you've got to explain that to them so they understand, because otherwise people don't pay attention to that awareness training. Data security, protective technologies, all these things start increasing and helping secure your facility a lot more. Detection, I want to see any anomalies or events that are happening that are out of the norm. I want to have that continuous monitoring in my system and be able to detect things that are going on. Respond, so there's my response planning. That incident response plan, again, comes important. Communication, communicating it to key stakeholders and making sure when you're communicating things, only the public information officer is putting that information out there to the public. And the rest of the employees did not start talking about what happened to the system. Just allow your public information officer, your PIO, to be that media touch point. And mitigation, of course, and then there's recovery. Going through that recovery plan, looking at improvements, and all of these have different timelines. So again, if you're the baseline or one of those critical systems, every 12 months, 18, 24, 36 months, there's different things you have to go through and make sure those are being done during that time frame. So it's kind of like a little checklist. And lastly, going back, there's in response to pertinent, bulletins or alerts coming, you need to be able to respond to that and provide additional protective measures. And so there's a National Terrorism Advisory System that's going to give you a whole bunch of alerts. There's CISA with US CERT and ICS CERT, which will give you alert reports as well. InfraGuard, and you can fine tune these things to give me, open up the floodgates and get everything, or fine tune it to, I'm just looking at pipelines in my particular area, or maybe I want to know about pipelines for all over the place. And so if you're trying to do these things, it's great trying to do these things on your own, and you can. Just recommendations that, you might not want to try and do it on your own. You start getting into some of these things. I put up a little thing here of the chemical terrorism vulnerability information. People who sit there and understand what are those chemicals and what are those situations that you have to worry about. For those who were early, you started hearing about Teresa talk about Vincent ion sites. You want to have some of those people who start to think outside the box, okay? Or as I love to refer to it as, people who can think evil. Like, if I was a bad guy, what would I do in this system? Like, I've walked up to pipelines and, they've got a big valve there and it's secure, and they put a chain around the valve, the handle, and I walked up to it and I slid the chain down and started to go, oh, now I can push this valve closed in your pipeline. And they're like, oh, please don't do that. But it was scary that they thought, hey, we secured it because we put a chain around the handle, not thinking that you could just slide the chain down the pipe and now be able to turn it. And I've seen fence lines around some of those critical pipeline facilities where they had crash bars for the doors. And so I could reach through the gate, press the little crash bar, and open up the gate. So some of those resources, and I can put these in the chat. The Pipeline Security Initiative on the CISA website, as well as the Pipeline Security Guidelines. Those are the ones that got updated in April of this year. Again, I'll put those in the chat. But otherwise, that's the fun-filled presentation. If you guys have any questions or things I didn't cover, please feel free.